So first of all, thank you Nikhil and Narsi for this opportunity to interact with all the innovators and investors. So I'm Rahul Walwalkar, representing energy storage industry. And as Professor Ashok keeps on urging me, it's a high time I need to start discharging. But anyway, I think the energy storage industry, I have been involved now for last 20 years. I started first looking at energy storage accidentally back in 2004 when Electric Power Research Institute actually reached out and said that they're working on some amazing technologies and they were not sure how they fit into electricity markets. And that time, even first time when I looked at these large scale batteries, which were projected at almost $5-6 million per megawatt hour, I was thinking we can do actually a lot more on just energy efficiency, demand response, and why should we waste time? But as we started looking at the way actually electric grid was evolving, it started becoming very clear to me that energy storage technologies actually have a key role. And that's where last 20 years I've been working with some amazing team members as well as more than 200 plus industry leaders. And now I think it's great to see that there is almost a very clear clarity that everyone agrees that energy storage is an essential part of the clean energy transition, what we are talking about. Oops. Sorry. Can you go in full screen mode? Do Control N. Yeah. Okay. So I think in terms of the need, I think all the audience, I think it will be preaching to choir, but especially looking at what happened in the recent past with the heat waves, I think it's very clear that we cannot wait. And this is one theme, I think, which I want to urge, because traditionally, if you see, most of the technologies which are transformational or what Professor Satya and others have talked, if you see actually the track record of technology, not just development, but technology commercialization and technology manufacturing scale up, it has taken almost 30 to 40 years for technologies which are making a global scale impact right now. So solar, probably from 60s, it was invented. Solar panels were being used for right from satellites to calculators to others. But then in terms of actually having grid scale impact, it has been just maybe last 20 years where solar has started to scale up. Same thing with lithium-ion batteries. Suddenly last 5 years, everyone thinks that lithium-ion batteries have started achieving this amazing deployment run, but lithium-ion batteries were invented almost in 1976. They were first commercialized in 1993, and it was only after around 2010 they started finding application in grid-scale applications, e-mobility, and then we have seen in last 10-15 years amazing manufacturing scale-up. Unfortunately, we don't have another 40 years for some of the technologies which are at early stage commercialization, and that's because of urgency for climate change. So one of the challenge what all of us have is not just how we invent new technology or how we create startups which become unicorns, but can we, as Narsi was saying, can we actually get to some scale which is going to have an impact at climate scale? I think for 2030, we are already too late for most of the technologies what we are going to be discussing, but at least by 2035, can we aim to scale at least some of these technologies to a scale where we can have a climate impact? And that's going to be my focus. In terms of, again, the need for storage, I think this is all most of you know. But one thing I would suggest is that we keep on talking about storage being a Swiss knife. Storage has multiple applications. But at the same time, on the policy level, in terms of the market, we end up going back to sort of some of the old metrics where we are only valuing, say, energy arbitrage as the value. So if you see all the gigawatt hour scale tenders which we have released in last 12 months, 18 months, primarily they are only valuing shifting of renewables from wherever they are being generated to maybe the evening peak. That's the primary focus for 2-hour or 4-hour storage. And all the other value streams where it can be optimized for transmission, distribution optimization, ancillary services, there is no market mechanism yet to actually value it. And that's why actually some of the scale up of this technology is slower. So we need to start identifying how do we not just keep on waiting for technologies to mature and the cost to go down, but we need to figure out how do we identify right business models, right policy structures, which can enable deployment of these technologies right now, and then as the technologies scale up, you can start having price reduction, you can find more applications. Again, in terms of storage, although everyone nowadays thinks only about batteries or primarily lithium-ion batteries, as an India Energy Storage Alliance, we have been advocating for policies which look at storage both for stationary as well as e-mobility. And then within stationary storage, it's not just about batteries, but also looking at mechanical storage, pumped hydro, compressed air energy storage, thermal storage, which is again very much relevant for industrial decarbonization, chemical storage where hydrogen comes into it, ultra capacitors, which can be again good for pulse applications, and then ultimately also power electronics becomes a critical part for converting AC to DC and then back to AC. Now, when comparing technologies, everyone keeps on thinking that, okay, is there only one technology? But one thing what you have to realize is that technology is not only about what is the cheapest technology. There are various parameters which decide if the technology is applicable for particular application. And this could be energy density, this could be cycle life, it could be safety, round trip efficiency. Obviously, cost is one of the parameters, but all of these parameters, and there is no silver bullet where you are going to have one single technology which is going to be like a perfect on the highest 5 score on all of that. And again, at some point, maybe one of you will invent such technology, but you don't need to wait for that perfect technology, because if you see from the application side, again, the requirement is different. So if you start actually mapping these, if you understand the application requirement, then you can actually find out that multiple technologies can coexist, and there is going to be sufficient opportunity for many technologies to scale up. The other thing is we think a lot about cost reduction, but other parameters which have actually enabled deployment of many of the storage technologies, particularly the lithium-ion batteries, is other parameters like energy density improvement, cycle life improvement, round-trip efficiency improvement. And all these parameters ultimately account in terms of the economics when you are looking at in terms of the levelized cost of energy. Because it is not just about reducing the capital cost. If you double the cycle life, that means in the denominator, the amount of energy throughput, what you are going to get from the system increases. If you improve the efficiency, then again, the cost of energy which you are charging and which you need to use for delivering it at some different point, that cost goes down. So there are multiple such aspects which you need to consider to make sure, and you don't need to wait for just. Many times policymakers tend to sort of put these moonshots where they'll say, okay, we want solar at 1 cent, we want storage also to come down to below $50 per kilowatt hour price point, and then we will deploy. But it is not necessarily that that's the only criteria. There may be one technology at certain price point, but other technology, even at a premium, can have some other performance parameters which can ultimately actually make it competitive on a levelized storage. So you need to make sure that when you are issuing various tenders and or if as a large industries, if you are evaluating technologies, you are not only focusing on negotiating on the upfront capital cost, but you need to look at a complete life cycle cost, and where you draw the boundary of that life cycle cost can lead to number of different example, and that's where like Energy Consortium and others can help in developing right frameworks which create those type of models. Now, in terms of, again, as I mentioned, lithium-ion batteries have not arrived just in last 5 years, although we are talking a lot more about them in last 5 years. But lithium-ion batteries since 1976, a lot of activities have happened. And nowadays, many times I keep on hearing about, oh, is sodium-ion going to be the lithium-ion killer? Is aluminum-air going to be the lithium-ion killer? The way I see it is, no one is going to kill anyone. Even lithium-ion batteries after 50 years haven't yet killed lead-acid battery as a market. There are still nickel-cadmium, nickel-metal hydride batteries used for certain applications. So I think many of these technologies are going to coexist. Within lithium-ion battery family, there is a lot of innovation still happening. Last maybe 10 years, a lot of innovation was focused on cathode side of it, where we went from LFP to looking at NMC, NMC 111, 322, 522, 611, 811, now 9.5.5. So these are the different permutation combinations of different elements within the cathode. But then now we are just starting with looking at adding silicon into the anode side, looking at lithium metal anodes, looking at solid electrolytes. So lot of improvements which are possible within the lithium-ion family, and it is not just the existing lithium-ion family. Within even LFP, when we were working on the setting up the national advanced chemistry cell battery manufacturing, there were some think tanks who had this view that LFP is outdated technology and India should not actually encourage manufacturing of LFP chemistry because we are going to get dumped with a lot of old outdated technologies from China, and we will actually end up becoming dumping ground for outdated technologies. But looking at what was happening, we were able to, as an ISA, advocate that no, government should not try to pick a technology winner and it should be left to the market. And right now, if you see, many places LFP has actually overtaken NMC. Even companies like Tesla have started using LFP cells in their electric vehicles. So a lot of dynamics are happening because again, it is not only about the material level. It is about the cell form factor. It is about the pack level. It ultimately includes a number of parameters which determine which technology is going to win. And there is no one answer which any one of us knows which is going to remain true for next 10 years or 15 years. So we need to be flexible. We need to make sure that we are providing enough flexibility for this type of innovation to take place. In terms of stationary storage market, again, these are the conservative or baseline estimates where we are looking at from currently around 100 gigawatt hour annual market. We are by 2030, the global stationary storage market is going to grow to almost close to 600 gigawatt hour annual market. Just actually CA has projected that in India, the requirement for stationary energy storage is going to be anywhere from 100 to 150 gigawatt hour per year by 2030, 2032, considering the 500 gigawatt target what we have for renewable energy. And then the prices have now come down to a level where when we first started working on grid scale energy storage projects, we are looking at price points of more than $1,000 per kilowatt hour for deploying storage, especially lithium-ion based storage, where we were looking at only using it for 15-minute or 30-minute kind of application. But as now over last 10, 15 years, the prices have come down from that level to down to almost $150 or below, so almost 10x reduction. We are starting to see lithium-ion batteries being used for up to 6 hours of storage applications. So many times again, people try to sort of divide storage technologies into different categories as long duration, short duration, and try to keep certain chemistries in certain buckets, but ultimately it is about which technology can scale up, which technology can achieve the economies of scale, where these boundaries are sort of artificial boundaries and they keep on shifting. We have seen recently some tenders where even 8-hour storage projects were won by lithium-ion batteries. So again, if you are an innovator, if you are working on certain technology, don't assume that you just have certain market open for you. Competition is also working on it, and you can always see that encroaching on your area. So as ISA, we are fortunate now that ISA has become a very robust ecosystem, whereas Narsim mentioned, we are working with almost close to 200 plus companies, right from startups. Some of those are no longer startups, but companies like Aether to giants like Toyota, leading companies on the lead acid battery like Exide, Amar Raja, to again seeing these companies now setting up some of the early gigafactories in India. So we are seeing a lot of activity across the complete ecosystem through the ISA network. And we are working not just on, again, as I said, batteries, but we are looking for stationary storage, we are looking for e-mobility, we are looking for building the complete robust manufacturing and supply chain ecosystem, as well as we are working on green hydrogen. And some of the learnings what we can take from last sort of 15, 20 years of deployment of solar and lithium-ion is that, yes, when the initially prices are high, obviously the application and market size will be limited, but as you can scale up manufacturing by focusing on the right applications, like again, lithium-ion batteries, the manufacturing scale up did not happen just because some policy came out. It happened because companies like A123 found the right market in terms of power tools, where they were able to use the lithium-ion batteries even at $750, $800 per kilowatt hour and create an initial market demand, which created first sort of a 500 plus megawatt hour kind of a manufacturing scale. And then later on, when Elon Musk decided and picked lithium-ion batteries for the EV and said that no, with the kind of projection we have, I cannot deal with only like 1 or 2 gigawatt hour kind of a manufacturing, but straight away set a target for a 50 gigawatt hour manufacturing scale. That changed the complete mindset of looking at technologies, and that corresponded with a lot of rapid reduction in cost of the technology. Also technology evolution, not just with the materials, but even looking at cell form factors. Like earlier we used to work with 18650, so basically cells which had 18 millimeter diameter and 60 millimeter height, whereas now we are getting to cells like Ola. I was just a couple of days back at the Ola Gigafactory, and they are producing cells which are now 48 mm in diameter and 60 mm in height. So lot of these type of form factor changes are happening if you are looking at stationary storage, prismatic cells which are being primarily used. Earlier there used to be like 50 ampere hour used to be the maximum capacity for these cells, whereas now almost 350 ampere hour is the cell size which is there, and soon we are looking at people moving towards 500 or 700 ampere hour into a single cell prismatic cell. So there are a lot of these type of innovations are happening, and that is leading to even system size optimization. I think I saw yesterday 1 megawatt hour system deployed here for IIT Madras Research Park. But what we are seeing commercially now is that in a similar size container, people are talking about deploying 8 to 10 or even more megawatt hour of system. When first time actually in 2008 storage systems were deployed in a similar size container, only around 250 to 500 kilowatt hour systems were possible. So we are seeing a lot of these type of improvements which is making storage much more viable. And one thing, many times we obviously try to compete with China on the policy side or as a geopolitics, but ultimately we need to learn a lot from China in terms of how to scale up the manufacturing, how to build the ecosystem. Hopefully while doing that, we can learn also from Europe in terms of looking at how to bring in focus on sustainability, ESG, so that we are not only focusing on building up manufacturing and avoiding one environmental problem for one side of the system to other side of the system. Also, I think in the United States has been at the forefront of the technology advancement, but even in US, a lot of these policy changes have taken long time. So many times in India, we criticize our policymakers for taking long time for policy changes, but that's a case everywhere. So if you are again an innovator, I would say that you cannot just sit in isolation, working in a lab, working in a factory, just trying to perfect your technology. You need to be out there, and that's where someone like IESA or other industry alliances can help you, is you need to interact, because when policymakers are setting policies, they need to be aware about what technology innovation is happening, what is possible, because many times policymakers are not trying to block certain technology, but if they are not even aware of what is possible, as Professor Junjunwala talked about, impossible is possible, you cannot actually make and set right policies, and it's going to be a long-term process. So be involved outside your box is also very important. In terms of the policy innovation, I think we need to have obviously progressive policies. We need to have market-based incentives, because again, no government, be in India or be in US, has unlimited capital to keep on picking up winners and supporting technologies forever. Most of the policy incentives are going to be available for maybe 3 years or 5 years at the max. So there needs to be a very clear pathway on how you scale up the technologies and how you make them commercially viable within that time. Otherwise, this is not going to scale up. We need to definitely start focusing on R&D, and I'm just really glad that in last 3 years, I'm seeing a complete change in the mindset. When we started talking about India-based gigafactories and manufacturing, there was a lot of skepticism that no, India cannot just get into it. We are not even manufacturing aluminum cans. How can we get into cathode or anode manufacturing? There was large opposition when Niti Aayog first proposed that there needs to be minimum 60% domestic value addition for being eligible for PLI incentive. Many even large international companies came and tried to oppose that, saying that India just doesn't have the ecosystem, or India cannot have that ecosystem. But IESA insisted that based on the member input that no, there were multiple companies ready for investing in this area, and the government listened to it, and now we are seeing actually more than 80 companies in India are investing in complete ecosystem, looking at R&D. But that's where again there is a gap. The kind of R&D what we're doing at academic level versus the kind of R&D which is expected by industry, there is a big gap. So again, we are working with Ministry of Science and Technology for bridging this gap. But there again, we don't need to work in isolation. I think as a India, we have excellent partnerships. Right now, Prime Minister is in US for Quad meetings, and we have, especially between US, Japan, Australia, India, as well as with Europe, excellent opportunity for leverage the R&D which is happening at global scale, because now many scientists of Indian origin are working in these regions, and we can actually leverage those things to fast track and not just leapfrog, but pole vault, as Dr. Mashelkar has started talking about, that you leapfrog when you are like a frog leapfrogs when he is scared about something. Whereas now, when we are looking at innovation, when we are looking at scaling up, we need to look at actually pole vaulting, so that you can actually start playing in a different league altogether with international players. Now, again, on a positive side, in last 10 years, as I talked about on an earlier slide about US policies, Indian policymakers have also addressed many of the barriers which were preventing scale-up of storage. And as a result, just in last 18 months, we have seen many of the tenders coming up in India. In 2022, we released the vision for India, where we said that between 2022 to 2030, India needs to have at least 160 gigawatt hour of storage deployed for grid scale applications. But now we have started seeing various tenders like flexible and distributed renewables, or FDRE tenders, to firm and dispatchable renewable power tenders, which are directly at a gigawatt hour scale. And we are pretty sure that we are going to surpass that 160 gigawatt hour cumulative target what we had set up in 2022, thanks to the progressive leadership by CA and CRC. These are just some of the tenders which are currently either just recently the results have come up, or the tenders are in various stages of RFP. Probably this is not readable, but we'll be sharing the presentation so you can take a look at it. And you can go to IESA website, where there is a live dashboard where all these tenders are being updated on a regular basis. And the good part is there was a time frame between 2017 to 2021 where many of these tenders were announced but did not get executed. But now we are seeing that just in the last 6 months, there are at least around 10 tenders of 50 megawatt hour or bigger, which have been awarded, and now we are seeing a lot of activity on the deployment side. But one challenge, again, as Narsi pointed out earlier, was that we cannot actually keep on suddenly jumping to gigawatt hour scale project. There needs to be a lot of learning by doing. We need to do field trials. We need to do pilots. We need to analyze that data. We need to have iterative improvements. We cannot expect something to work perfectly in a directly large-scale deployment. And that's something where I think we are a little bit lacking, but we hope that within next 2 years we will cross this hurdle. But in general, like beyond just storage, I would suggest for any of the innovators who are working on something else, when you are selecting a pilot, please do not just pick a pilot because you want a press release or you just want to show something to your investor that you are doing a pilot with some utility or some marquee name. Because I've seen last 20 years in India, India has actually internationally, people off the record talk about India being a graveyard of pilots. Because most of the pilots which are being done in India have no clarity on why the pilot is being done, except for getting a press release out of it. When you are doing a pilot, you need to have a very clear objective of, okay, are you demonstrating technology? Are you demonstrating certain performance parameters? Are you demonstrating certain viability on the business model? What is that objective of that? So that when at end of the pilot, you can evaluate if the pilot is successful or not. And there needs to be actually a next step in terms of what that pilot is going to lead to. And that is the missing space. And there, I would think that the blame gets divided across everyone, because many times I have seen customers just being interested because they want to show to their management that they are doing something innovative, so they are interested in doing pilots. And we see companies being interested just because they want to show something to investors, and investors also actually have to take some blame, because they are also interested in making sure that their portfolio companies are doing some pilots so that there is a next round valuation which is higher. And this becomes a vicious cycle, and ultimately we see a lot of money being wasted with companies just burning through the cash and not getting to the scale which is required to really achieve the economic viability. So we need to be smart about how we are addressing this. And that's where, again, beyond technology innovation, we need to start looking at business model innovation. And there again, it should not be tied to just only one technology side, because, for example, energy as a service or battery leasing, second life applications, these are all examples. But one example of this is battery swapping. And many times it was seen as a competition between battery swapping or fixed vehicle as two options, where in one side customer has to pay for all upfront costs, on other side customer can pay as you go. Whereas you can actually do battery leasing with a fixed battery vehicles as well. It's just a financial model which needs to be implemented. So we need to be flexible on looking at these models and take benefits so that we can scale these markets very fast. Now, overall, we are very happy that, again, I was at RE Invest just earlier this week, and Prime Minister has again insisted his commitment for the Panchamrut vision as well as the 500 gigawatt target by 2030, and then looking at beyond that, getting to the 2047 to make India a developed nation. And from that side, already the Prime Minister has announced creation of the ANRF, the Anusandhan National Research Foundation. Hopefully through that and through a partnership with academic institutions as well as with various industries, we can actually change the way India is being looked at as not just an adopter, but actually an innovator. Also, I think with various PLIs, we are seeing a change in the industry mindset, where 5 years back, I was seeing lack of confidence in many of the industries on trying to invest on this large-scale project. But just in last 2-3 years, we have seen so many announcements, not just for storage, but also in area of semiconductors and others, where I think Indian industries are coming together. And with COVID, most of the international partners are realizing they need a China plus one policy. And there again, there is I'm very optimistic that in next 10 years, we are going to see India keep on climbing on the global manufacturing index. So for coming to India, we have a lot of building blocks in place, but at the same time, again, don't expect miracles. Next 2 years is going to be very, very challenging. We need to do a lot of things right to really have a chance for India to be a global hub for manufacturing, especially on storage. But as a ISA, we have set a vision where it is not only about the 50 gigawatt hour target, which currently government is incentivizing through PLI, but as an industry, we should be aiming at adding another 500 plus gigawatt hour within next 10 years as a manufacturing. And then maybe looking at the supply chain, where we are looking at more than double of that as a supply chain, because supply chain has a easy opportunity to be part of a supply chain ecosystem for Europe, for US, for other non-China production countries, where I think that the chemical industry with the strengths in India, we can actually scale up the supply chain at a much, much higher pace than what we can scale the gigafactories in India. But again, this is not going to be easy, and this is certainly not going to make India number 1 or number 2 or even number 3 in the world. Right now, globally, there are individual companies who have more than 300 gigawatt hour manufacturing either already built or within next 2-3 years, they will cross that 300 gigawatt hour as a single company. So I think Narsi gave a lot of examples about how certain countries and individual companies were being compared, and that's the case where we are in. So we should not be suddenly saying that, okay, because we went from 0 to 50, now we are doing great. No, the global manufacturing, which was at maybe under 1,000 gigawatt hour when we conceptualized the 50 gigawatt hour policy. Now global manufacturing is crossing 5,000 gigawatt hour, whereas we are just starting our first maybe 5 gigawatt hour commissioning is happening right now in India. So we are in a completely different league, and there are going to be challenges. There will be some individual companies who may face some problems while they scale up. But again, all of us together need to make sure that we get to this at least minimum 500 gigawatt hour scale if we really want India to be on a global landscape. And while doing this, one key thing we need to do is we need to focus on quality and safety. I think right now I see just too much focus on only affordability, only on the how do we make the technology cheap. I think that we have to do for scaling up, but quality and safety is something which, especially with storage technologies, we cannot emphasize less. We need to make sure, because we have seen it even with countries like Korea, in Australia, in US, when people started suddenly deploying technologies too fast, there were actually accidents, and that set those industries back by anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And because in India we have spent 5-6 years on just talking about these things, we don't have another even 1 year to waste in terms of stopping back. Like what happened with electric two-wheelers, with all the fires and almost 20 plus people losing their lives. Those were just with 2, 3, 4 kilowatt hour batteries. Now we are deploying storage systems on grid scale at 50 megawatt hour, at 500 megawatt hour or more. And at that scale, the disaster is going to be very scary. So we need to not compromise and make sure that we are not only pushing for cheapest deployment, but quality needs to be there. And again, I'm really honored, and I always love to be back at IIT Madras, because I spend almost half of my time what I spend with academic institutions with IIT Madras, because I think there is such an amazing ecosystem built here. And I hope that all of you take benefit of the ecosystem built by the Energy Consortium as well as the IIT Madras Research Park, because we need many of you to really scale up. And again, I would insist, don't think about the success of your startup only in terms of valuation. I know becoming unicorn is a dream, and that's something which both investors will push you for, or that may be your own aspiration, but ultimately you need to strive for impact and getting to a scale. So focus on building your companies for making sure that you're doing it, and there is nothing wrong in failing. You can, but if you fail fast, if you learn something which is not working, you can actually use your talent, you can use your team's time to building something which is going to have that impact. And that's what we need to work, because all of us around the world are running against time, and we need to make sure that we are there. And feel free to reach out to me or my team at IESA for any global collaborations, because we are pretty sure that this is a problem where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to make sure that we are taking the innovations which are happening around the globe and then try to actually learn from each other, so that we are developing global scale solutions together. There are a lot of research opportunities, there is entrepreneurship, there is a role in policy, there is role in skill development, because again, as we are talking about the scale at which this transition is happening, we need not thousands, but we need hundreds of thousands of trained professionals. And again, that's a part where we need to make sure that we are not reinventing the wheel, we are not duplicating effort by developing training programs and other things in silos. And that's where, again, as IESA, we have built a platform called IESA Academy, and we are working with IIT Madras as well as many of the other academic institutions to make sure that we can maybe do the train the trainers, and then make sure that we are reaching to these hundreds of thousands of skilled professionals who can not just meet India's need, but also can meet the global need. And last thing I would just give a plug is that actually this Sunday is a World Energy Storage Day. 22nd September gets celebrated each year as a World Energy Storage Day. Since it's a Sunday, we are hosting our virtual conference on Monday, which is 23rd September. If you are interested, it's a free conference where you will hear almost 100 speakers from 30 plus countries share their insights across the complete ecosystem of energy storage, stationary storage, e-mobility, green hydrogen, and you can listen to all this sitting at your home or your office by just logging on to this website, and it's completely free. So please join us for this, and once again, I'd like to thank IIT Madras Research Park and IIT Madras Energy Consortium for hosting this event and giving me opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.